Barrie resident Rob Wonfor expressed serious concerns about the proposed Phase 2 development at 200 and 210 Bertha Avenue that would be located directly across from his home. He spoke to Simcoe Community Media about the plans for two six-story rental and condominium buildings, part of a larger 468-unit project. The development falls within Ward 9, represented by Councillor Sergio Morales.
Single family dwelling, a very mature lot, mature trees in the area, exactly where I want to be, and this will directly impact possibly my my housing market, what it's going to do for the houses on that location, the value of my home, and also the privacy that I have if we're going to put up mid and high-rise units in the area. So I was here just to see where Phase 2 was. Tonight it wasn't going forward, it was just a first stage proposal for Phase 2. So Phase 1 being on Big Bay Point isn't really my concern. But Phase 2, which faces Bertha Avenue, is definitely my concern. So,
while acknowledging the city's need to accommodate future growth and increased density, Wonfor stressed the negative impact that such mid-rise buildings could have on his mature single-family neighborhood. He cited concerns over loss of privacy, declining property values, and prolonged construction disruption. These concerns were shared after a meeting of the Affordability Committee, which deals with housing-related matters in the city.
I think it's just in the proposal stage. If they get Phase 1 passed, which they still have to continue with, then they want to try and expedite Phase 2 going forward, which I would understand as a builder will probably help their situation for underground parking and for all the trades that they need to build, but they'll directly impact myself on that street. And as far as construction going on for years. So I just moved into the place a couple of years ago, and now it's, do I sell, do I stay, do I renovate? So now it's a concern. So I understand the city's situation, but they've got to understand my situation too. So,
although the meeting included a presentation regarding zoning bylaw amendment for Phase 1, fronting Big Bay Point Road, Phase 2 remains in the early proposal stage, meaning the resident was not able to formally address the council on that part of the project. During the meeting, the Employment Lands Community Improvement Plan (CIP) was presented by Stephanie Schrichter, Director of Economic and Creative Development. The presentation introduced a proposed incentive program aimed at attracting job-creating businesses, especially in sectors like advanced manufacturing and life sciences, through financial tools such as tax increment grants, free rebates, study grants, and development charge deferrals. Schlichter emphasized that the plan is designed to make Barrie more competitive for investment at both provincial and global levels. A final staff report is expected to be presented in September 2025.
This is a response overall to a globally competitive climate for attracting employment and investment. And when you look at site selectors and what they're looking for, access to talent is critical. We have that in spades. Yes, lifestyle goes into the picture, affordability goes in, and yes, our affordability, when you compare us to markets such as the GATA, we are certainly competitive, but we also have to take that bigger step back and say, how do we look in the global marketplace? When I'm a company that can be maybe anywhere, why do I pick Barrie? And I think this set of tools is intended to address some of that.
This is, I think, very forward-thinking. I think this is a proper reaction to the date and time we have in terms of the difficulty it is and for folks to make ends meet, for the amount of people that are driving to Toronto. I think this is exactly on theme. I think this is exactly where we need to be going. And I've heard nothing but positive about what we offer to those who are looking to do business in Barrie. And I think this will really up our game.
Following is our interview with the resident and coverage of the meeting.
So there's been a proposal to put a 6-story rental or condominium in Phase 2 on Bertha Avenue, which directly impacts my community. It's right across the street from me, so there's going to be, the proposal is to put 2 of them, 2 6-story units. approximately 468 units, which would add to the density, understanding that the City of Barrie obviously has to increase and have a plan going forward. However, I'm in a single family dwelling, a very mature lot, mature trees in the area, exactly where I want to be, and this will directly impact possibly my my housing market, what it's going to do for the houses on that location, the value of my home, and also the privacy that I have if we're going to put up mid and high rise units in the area. So I was here just to see where phase 2 was. Tonight it wasn't going forward, it was just a first stage proposal for phase 2. So phase 1 being on Big Bay Point isn't really my concern. But phase 2, which faces Bertha Avenue, is definitely my concern. So I think it's just in the proposal stage. If they get phase 1 passed, which they still have to continue with, then they want to try and expedite phase 2 going forward, which I would understand as a builder will probably help their situation for underground parking and for all the trades that they need to build, but they'll directly impact myself on that street. And as far as construction going on for years. So I just moved into the place a couple of years ago, and now it's, do I sell, do I stay, do I renovate? So now it's a concern. So I understand the city's situation, but they've got to understand my situation too. So. Well, when you look at the official plan and what they're doing in the area, changing all the zoning from residential to mid-rise and possibly high-rise on Yonge Street, so we're being basically surrounded by larger buildings. So I assume that the zoning would change in our area for our 6 houses that are surrounded by Ashford, Bertha, and Kenneth. 6 homes that are there. I would imagine the city will want to go forward and change that zoning. There's a lot of commercial area, lots of schools, so to have 6 homes there might not make sense in the future. So if it doesn't make sense in the future, then let's change that zoning now, and possibly, and maybe we can move forward and not be in limbo waiting for a decision to be made down the road and have to bear through construction for the next several years. So that's our point for phase 2. Well, it depends if they even get phase 2 approved. Perhaps they won't get phase 2 approved, and maybe it'll be townhouses. That proposal might not go through, but if you look at the overall view of the area and what they've changed for zoning, I think zoning will change in that area, and it's unlikely they would leave 6 homes in a nightmare island surrounded by high and mid-rise density housing. So that's what I think is going to happen there.
I call the Affordability Committee meeting to order. This meeting is being held in person and electronically in accordance with the Municipal Act. Tonight we have 3 public meetings to be held, and if you are joining the meeting virtually and not yet registered and wish to speak, please email cityclerks@barrie.ca and staff will email you the information to participate virtually. The first public meeting is to review an application submitted by Innovative Planning Solutions, IPS, on behalf of DBZ Big Bay Twins Limited for an amendment to the zoning bylaw to permit a residential development. The subject lands are municipally known as 545 to 565 Big Bay Point Road, 207-209 Montgomery Drive, 200 to 210 Bertha Avenue, and 218 Ashford Drive. The second public meeting is to review an application submitted by Innovative Planning Solutions on behalf of 1417788 Ontario Limited for an amendment to the zoning bylaw to permit the conversion of an existing building to a dental office. The subject lands are municipally known as 89 Big Bay Point Road. The third public meeting is to review a proposed employment land development community improvement plan. Members of the committee will be listening to the presentations and comments received during the public meetings, but will not be making comments or debating the items tonight. Committee members will have an opportunity to provide comments when staff reports are considered by General Committee at a later date. Interested persons wishing notification of staff reports can sign the notification form at the back of the council chambers or by email at cityclerks@barrie.ca. Michelle Banfield, Executive Director of Development Services, would you please confirm that the notifications were conducted in accordance with the Planning Act for tonight's public meeting?
Yes, Chair Harris, it was.
Thank you. Now to our first public meeting. I will now call upon Daphne Goxon of Innovative Planning Solutions to provide the presentation concerning the zoning bylaw amendment application 545-565 Big Bay Point Road, 207-209 Montgomery Drive, and 200-210 Bertha Avenue, and 218 Ashford Drive.
So good evening. My name is Daphne Goxon from Innovative Planning Solutions, and I'm here tonight for a second public meeting on this project located at 545-565 Big Bay Point Road. There are some extra addresses in the application since we were last here, so I'll explain that during my presentation. So next slide, or do I have, here we go. Okay, so the subject site is located off Big Bay Point Road, just east of Yonge. The applicants control this entire block and intend to redevelop it in 2 phases. So the development application before you today is only for phase 1, but we have now added a rezoning request for the phase 2 lands. So that's sort of why we're here. So just a bit of a project timeline. We made our first submission in November 2024. We were here before council in February. We received technical comments in April, and we worked with staff to prepare an updated application, which has been resubmitted. And then, of course, following this meeting, we'll be coming to council for general committee and final vote. So the development concept is largely unchanged from when I was here in February. It's 2 6-story purpose-built rental apartment buildings totaling 468 dwelling units. 10% of the units, which is 46 units, would be affordable units. There's also over 3,000 square meters of outdoor amenity area and parking at grade and in 1 level of underground parking. This slide was also shown at the last public meeting just to give you an idea of what the design would be further refined during site plan, but this is just to give you some idea of what it'll look like. So as mentioned, the applicants own the entire block and their intention is to develop the southern portion as phase 2. And at full build out, the driveway is proposed to be shared between both phases. So I've outlined the driveway there with the red box. So as a result, it was designed to straddle the property lines and actually encroaches into the phase 2 lots, which are along Bertha Avenue and also Montgomery and Ashford. The underground parking for phase 1 was also designed to be underneath the driveway. So it also encroaches into those phase 2 lots. So the phase 2 lots are zoned R1 currently, which does not permit the driveway and parking. So that is the issue and why we're here today. So in order to permit the driveway and parking garage, we need to rezone the phase 2 lands to the RA2-1 zone, which is what we are also proposing for the phase 1 lands. The zoning for these phase 2 lands will have a holding provision to ensure that there's no development on those lands until we have a proper development concept that we present to staff. So this isn't really allowing development, it's really only allowing the driveway and the parking garage on those lands. And then once the development plans for phase 2 are finalized, if we need any special provisions or deviations from the setbacks, then we'll also apply for either a zoning bylaw amendment or minor variance as necessary. So this is, again, a slide that I showed back in February showing the site-specific provisions for the phase 1 lot. Nothing has changed. The only thing that's new that I've highlighted is the phase 2 lands where the proposed zoning is the RA2-1 with the special provision and holding provisions as well. So that's basically all I have for you today. I'm happy to go into more detail, but I didn't want to repeat what you already heard in February. So really, it's to still, for those 2 6-story buildings along Big Bay Point Road, purpose-built rental apartment buildings, including affordable housing. We're just adding that request to rezone the phase 2 lands just to allow the driveway and the parking garage to encroach into those lands. And so, yeah, I also want to just thank city staff. They've been really helpful in amending the application and getting it before this committee today. So thank you so much.
And thank you. I will now call upon Christian Ramperso, planner from the Development Services Department, to provide an update on the status of the application.
Good evening, Chair Harris and members of the Affordability Committee. Further to Ms. Goxon's presentation and the memo provided to the Planning Committee, I'll provide an update regarding the status of the application, comments received from the public, and the primary planning and land use matters being considered by staff at this time. Planning staff are currently reviewing the proposed application, which seeks to allow the creation of 2 6-story residential apartment buildings with 468 purpose-built rental units within phase 1. An application for a portion of the property was previously presented at the public meeting on February 26, 2025. At that time, it included only the lands fronting onto Big Bay Point. For several technical reasons, the applicant has revised the concept plan to incorporate the entire block within the application boundary. The project now consists of two phases, Phase 1 fronting onto Big Bay Point, and Phase 2, which is planned to front onto Bertha Avenue. Phase 2 lands are proposed to be rezoned from residential single detached dwelling first density to residential apartment dwelling second density -1 with special provisions and a hold. There is a special provision being requested to establish a minimum parking ratio of 0.9 spaces per unit across the entirety of Phase 1 and Phase 2 lands. The holding provision that is proposed over the Phase 2 lands is to ensure sufficient servicing capacity and that the existing transportation network can accommodate the additional residential units proposed. This would be confirmed at time of subsequent detailed design through a subsequent site plan control application. A neighborhood meeting was held virtually through Zoom platform on October 10, 2024. There were approximately 7 attendees, including Ward 9 Councillor Sergio Morales, city planning staff, and the applicant's consultant in attendance. The ward councillor provided comments emphasizing the importance of promoting efficient land use and maximizing the potential for pedestrian and cyclist connectivity. Residents inquired about the school capacity in the immediate neighborhood and if a traffic impact study would be required to demonstrate appropriate capacity within the surrounding road network. The application is currently under review by planning staff, the city's technical review departments, and external agencies. The primary planning and land use matters being considered by staff at this time include compliance with the provincial planning policy and the city's official plan, compatibility with surrounding land uses, including anticipated development in the area, ensuring that the proposal meets the operational standards of all city service departments, and the impact that the proposed use may have on servicing and transportation infrastructure in the area. All comments received during the technical review process, as well as comments provided at both public meetings, will be included and addressed in the staff report that is targeted to be brought forward at the June 18th, 2025 General Committee and Council meeting. All submission materials and key dates associated with the project application are available online for viewing at the city's development projects page under Ward 9. Alternatively, you may contact myself directly. Thank you for your attention.
And thank you. We have nobody who is pre-registered. If there are members of the public who wish to provide comments now, please approach the podium and begin by stating your first and last name and address for the record. And seeing no takers, I would now move to, oh, sorry.
We're discussing phase 2.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you. My apologies for being rushed there. We'll now move to Ward 9 Councillor Morales. Do you have any questions or clarification?
Thank you, Chair Harris. The same as the resident who just kind of inquired the question for people watching at home. Just giving you context as to what happened. So, to the applicant, because we haven't seen renderings for 203. Is there a plan to have any driveway access on the Bertha side for phase 2? I just want, like, my understanding is if it's that by doing this encroachment, you're having it off Montgomery and Ashford, which in my opinion is great. And there's either no or minimal on Bertha, but I just want to triple check. Yeah, at the microphone so people at home can watch later.
Yes, that's correct. So the entrances would just be on Ashford and Montgomery, and then much like on Big Bay, it would just be the facade of the building, but no driveway access, just pedestrian access.
Okay, so it'll have a similar, like, not mezzanine, but like gap between the two. If the built form is similar, it'll have a gap in the middle because you can't have a building that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't have that information because the phase 2 hasn't been developed yet, and I'm not sure exactly what it will be. But obviously, we would comply with built form requirements.
Okay. So I know these are questions, but at this stage, what I really like about this is, Mayor Nuttall, if next time you get asked at Queen's Park, what are the things Barrie is doing to both cut red tape but also do things properly? Here's an example. The developer is essentially coming back for a almost second public meeting for the Big Bay side on this one because of the encroachment. And every application where you kind of get a good design and, where you think of something better you can do, in my experience, they've been like, you know what, we've already had a public meeting, let's just power forward. But on this one, by doing the encroachment on these lands, Mayor Nuttall, the intent would be to avoid having a road beside a road. Essentially having 6.4, hopefully we're getting it down to 6 times 12 times 2, 12 meters plus. So, and if anybody knows about condominiumized subdivisions where you have to put in the plastic speed bump and people are peeling in off the main road, this avoids that in a purposeful way without also creating issues that it's not wide enough, because that would be ridiculous at 14 meters. And they went through the effort to have this meeting, which again, most people in my experience would have just gone, let's power through. But at the same time, they're moving on a fast timeline while doing a better built form for the existing residents on Bertha and on Montgomery and Ashford. Additionally, the reason I asked the question I just asked is by eliminating driveways off Bertha. I'm not comparing 6 homes to X number of units, but right now you have 5 driveways. So you have cars coming in on Bertha, cars coming out, cars pulling in. This design essentially eliminates those driveways. So while I totally understand I'm not comparing a couple of houses to such a big change, that is purposeful. And the applicant so far has responded to that. I've had conversations with a couple of surrounding residents as long ago as last March. And this trickled up and it got listened to. So again, Mayor Nuttall, next time you get asked what's Barrie doing on this one, purpose-built rental, quality purpose-built rental, as well as taking care of the small designs, because we don't want people in 5 years plus to be like, who thought of these driveways? Why did you put 2 double driveways in front of Painswick Park? This is nonsense. And again, most applicants wouldn't essentially do a second public meeting. So I do want to commend the applicant and maybe even give the floor to the planner. Why was this so important to yourself and the applicant, and what could concerned residents or just curious residents in the area expect that one centralized driveway with an encroachment would be better than doing 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, it is a better design. So through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's a better design. It breaks up the block a little bit as well. And it will be at the final design, the idea is to have one consolidated parking garage, which will also allow for more parking spaces, because you would lose efficiency if you had to put in a wall and have 2 separate parking garages. So it's just a design that made sense given the plan for the whole block here.
Perfect. Anything that gets more parking spaces, I think, is good. I'm definitely a little bit of concern with that number there so far, but again, to the resident's point, this is kind of an interesting meeting because we're talking about the encroachment. Like, we can talk about the other stuff, but this is really about the encroachment, but it's indirectly tied. But slide 7 had the specific language about the holding provision. That the matter in question right now is to allow the driveway and garage entrance or not, and that no development would even be considered moving forward until you guys come back with detailed drawings so residents can take a look, give feedback, staff, councilors, to see what the density is with the proposed access setbacks. Is that correct? That nothing can happen with phase 2 until it comes back.
Yeah, through the chair, yeah, that's correct. So with the holding provision, we would have to make an application and present the plans. That would be the condition of the holding provision.
Okay.
Staff can confirm that as well if you don't believe me.
I do. It's just I'm doing this thing in our procedural bylaw that I have to ask a question. I can't make a statement. So don't you agree, or could you clarify? I want to make sure I get the information out there because not just the resident in the crowd, but they live and breathe this every day. And you guys have been in the neighborhood, if you will, since about March last year. So that's an ongoing thing every day, every week. And so any answers we can get on the record, the public record here in the civic space, no matter how obvious they may be, brings peace and understanding. So hence why I'm kind of phrasing it that way. And finally, give me a second here. I know you can't predict how long some of these things will take, but your understanding is that the focus is going to be on the Big Bay Point parcels, right? And I know that it's hard to give me 8 months or 60 months for anything on the other side, but could you maybe expand on the focus as to the prioritization of the Big Bay Point file with this encroachment?
Yep, so through the chair, I mean, these applicants, and I know you've met with them, Councillor Morales, they are very dedicated to getting this built. We're already working on site plan drawings and those detailed design drawings and hoping to have that submitted once this is, passed. So, yeah, try to work with an expedited timeline. And again, want to commend staff. We've been part of this new concierge program that was introduced by the planning department, and it has been amazing. This is the fastest project I think I've ever seen. So,
Perfect. For this magnitude, that's the one thing I know Mayor Nuttall and you and I have mentioned about it. These projects come to City Hall all the time, but how serious they are, how feasible they are and realistic is a different thing. And what I keep going back to is the initial designs you guys had, and I say this in a positive way, you guys had a road beside a road on what everyone's seeing right now, and then you had a road beside a road on Montgomery and a road beside a road on Ashford. You didn't kind of bring it out initially. So the amount of positive changes that yourself and the applicant have made, some from the feedback of the residents, some from my feedback, that little amenity space between the two buildings was like 11 meters. I don't usually have an issue. I think it should always be building code, Mayor Nuttall, but on this one, you had the space because you had two roads just kind of essentially being wasteful on the sides, and now it's a little bit more than 11. So that these changes make a difference, and again, I don't think it changes the reality for anybody facing change, but it definitely gives peace that their feedback is being listened to, adapted, and if again the fact that your client has an in-house like kind of site plan designer, so it doesn't take 2 months to do 2 changes, it takes like less than 2 weeks, is quite, it communicates seriousness. So I appreciate it. And at this time, do you have any understanding as to when residents might be able to expect a submission for phase 2?
through the chair, no, I don't have that information at this time. Really, the focus is phase 1 right now.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say, is there a question on phase 2 for later? And thank you for the questions, Councilor Morales. Thank you for the answers.
Okay, thank you.
So if anyone has any further written comments, you can submit them to Christian Rampersaud in the Development Services Department at christian.rampersaud@barrie.ca. That concludes this meeting. In the next second public meeting, I will now call upon Bishoy Shinoda of Innovative Planning Solutions to provide the presentation concerning the zoning bylaw amendment application 89 Big Bay Point Road.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of committee. My name is Bishoy Shinoda. I'm a senior planner with Innovative Planning Solution, and I'm here representing the landowner 1417-788 Ontario Limited with regard to the zoning bylaw application for 89 Big Bay Point. So 89 Big Bay Point is located within Ward 8 at the southeast in the corner of Big Bay Point and Bayview Drive. And I would like to point at a few of just the description of the surrounding uses and the site to start with. So it's an L-shaped property. The size is relatively about 1 acre, has dual frontage on both Big Bay and Bayview Drive, 40 and 80 meter frontage relatively. It's surrounded by industrial uses both on the north and the east. However, on the west side, there is vacant land as well as an existing medical building. So the site used to operate as an office during the period from 2005 to 2022. And what is being proposed is to allow for a medical office to occur. So we're seeking to allow a medical office. There is currently 13 available parking spaces which meet the zoning requirements. And I want to reiterate that there is no proposed alteration to the exterior site conditions. So it's just a matter of getting a permitted use and recognize existing conditions that we're seeking through this zoning bylaw. So currently through the OP, it's already designated employment area industrial, which permits stand-alone official office use. So there would be no amendment to the official plan. And through the slide, I'm highlighting a zoning compliance review that we have completed. So the only 3 items that are highlighted here that would require to be addressed through the zoning bylaw is to permit a medical office, because it's separately defined through the zoning bylaw, is to recognize a deficient exterior side yard, and this is a result of the requested road widening along Bayview Drive, and to recognize the existing parking aisle, which is at the narrowest part is 4 meters. However, I would like to highlight that, again, this was operated as an office building for more than 15 years, in which case the parking has functioned sufficiently. So through the zoning, we're really looking to implement, we're not changing the zone, it's just going to continue as general industrial, but we'll have site-specific provisions to address the 3 items that I've mentioned previously. And on that note, I have concluded my presentation, and be happy to answer any question.
And thank you. I will now call upon Rachel Mulholland, planner from the Development Services Department, to provide an update on the status of the application.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Harris and members of Affordability Committee. In addition to the presentation by the applicant's planning consultant, Mr. Bishoy Shinoda from Innovative Planning Solutions, a memorandum was provided to committee to describe the application. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment is to facilitate the conversion of an existing building on the property to a medical office. Currently, a medical office is not a permitted use on the property, but no changes to the existing building or site are anticipated, as discussed previously. Here is an update regarding the status of the application, comments received from the public, and primary planning and land use matters being considered by staff at this time as part of the technical review process. A neighborhood meeting for this application was held virtually February 6, 2025, with approximately 8 participants, including the ward councillor, and no comments or concerns were raised at the meeting. Staff are currently reviewing the application for compliance with provincial planning policy and the city's official plan, compatibility with surrounding land uses, including anticipated employment development in the area, and the impact that the proposed use may have on traffic and parking in the area, as medical offices are known to generate different traffic patterns from the existing use. A detailed analysis of these considerations will be provided when a staff report is brought forward for General Committee's consideration. Staff will continue to work with the applicant to address the comments raised through the analysis of these applications by technical staff and our agency partners. A staff report providing a recommendation to General Committee on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application is anticipated to be brought forward later in 2025. The submission materials and key dates associated with the application, along with my contact information, are available for viewing online on the city's proposed developments webpage under Ward 8. I'm happy to address any questions at this time or following comments from the public. Thank you.
And thank you. We have no one pre-registered. If there's anybody here who would like to comment, you can come to the mic. And not seeing anybody, I think that moves us to questions from the ward councillor. What's that? So I'm being asked to move along. Just kidding. So I really only have one question, and again, from the neighborhood meeting, there's no concern. My question, maybe to you, Ms. Mulholland, just the one question I have had in the area with the current existence of the medical campus on Bayview is people trying to exit that campus. And I'm wondering, you mentioned about traffic and the change, and obviously from a surveyor's site, the current users to an office building, medical office building. Will that be part of this kind of review of this area, or is it part of staff review around the pressures of exiting onto Bayview from both this site and the site that's directly across the road, the other medical building?
I do believe that will be part of the review by the Transportation Department. We haven't received their comments yet, but I anticipate that they will look at things of that sort. But once we do receive the comments, we will address that in the report.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So again, if anybody has any written comments, you can submit them to Rachel Mulholland in the Development Services Department at rachel.mulholland@barrie.ca. And now this brings us to our third public meeting. I will now call upon Stephanie Schlichter, Director of Economic and Creative Development, and Susan Rockney, Business Development Officer, to provide the presentation concerning a proposed employment lands development community improvement plan. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you. Good evening, Chair, Mayor Nuttall, members of the Affordability Committee, and the viewing public. Thank you for having us here this evening. Tonight, I am joined by one of our business development officers, Susan Rockey, who will be presenting with me tonight at the public meeting for the Employment Development Community Plan. Just a brief agenda of what we're going through. While the city has had a number of community improvement plans over its time, this is actually the first proposal of an employment land-specific CIP. Under the legislative framework of the Municipal Act, municipalities in Ontario are limited in what they can offer in terms of financial incentives to businesses. Unlike what you hear in places south of our Canadian border regarding tax or land incentives, cash or equivalent incentives to businesses are restricted here in Ontario. However, under the Planning Act, community improvement plans provide tools for incentivizing community improvement without contravening the Municipal Act bonusing restrictions. These incentives are intended to encourage revitalization initiatives and/or to stimulate development and redevelopment for various environmental, social, or community economic development reasons. These include covering some costs related to development and redevelopment, and there are some fees that a CIP cannot cover, and those include the exemption or waiving of development charges, the cancellation or reduction of municipal or school taxes, and waiving of any fees under the building code. The City of Barrie previously supported employment development through the development charge abatements. In 2023, an update of the DC bylaw, oh, I was supposed to change the slide, sorry. There we go. Let's try that again. In the city's 2023 update of the DC bylaw, we removed the previous DC abatements, and there was included a recommendation that any future business development incentives be administered through a CIP so that proper programs, evaluation criteria, business case review processes, and budgets could be established. As the city continues to seek to be competitive and attract employment to the community, council direction through the employment land strategy further directed staff to proceed with the public consultation process for the development of an employment lands development CIP, which is why we're here this evening. And in considering the development of an employment CIP, Invest Barrie also considered several factors to build on competitive advantages. We are well situated within Ontario's automotive corridor, and we are already home to several automotive parts manufacturers. And despite some of the recent challenges posed to the auto sector by the ongoing tariff situation, the health and success of the sector does remain a focus. Additional opportunities to explore sectors of interest and growth will also be considered in a CIP. Aligning with Invest Ontario, which is the province's dedicated investment attraction agency, an employment land CIP would provide Barrie with a means to offer incentives required to compete with municipalities across the province for large-scale investment opportunities brought in through Invest Ontario. And finally, aligning with the provincial brownfield tax incentive program, having a CIP provides businesses seeking to develop brownfield sites will now have access to the tax incentive program, which is a financing tool from the province of Ontario that helps municipalities give tax assistance to clean up brownfield properties. And before I do want to turn the plate over now to Sue, who will take us through the incentives that are proposed under the program.
Thank you. Before I talk about the proposed incentives, I just want to highlight a few of the eligibility requirements and submission details for this 5-year CIP. As it is an employment-focused CIP, residential, mixed-use, and commercial projects would not be eligible. It's focused on key target growth sectors such as manufacturing and health and life sciences, in addition to significant in-industry employment. Other areas of ineligibility could include things like flooding hazards, inadequate services at the property, or property taxes being in arrears. To provide as much flexibility as possible, applicants could apply at any time during the year and could apply for multiple incentives if eligible. They could also include project costs incurred prior to submitting a CIP application as long as an occupancy permit has not been issued. The submissions will be reviewed using a scorecard, which is currently being finalized. And to align the scorecard with the broader goal of the CIP to create jobs, particularly in our target sectors, higher scores would be given to projects in those key sectors and to projects with higher employment numbers, construction values, and larger building sizes. The proposed programs were chosen by reviewing best practices across the province, as well as cost drivers that would have value as an incentive. The programs include a tax increment equivalency grant, or TEAG, planning application fees and building permit fees grants, study grants, and finally, a development charge deferral program. The tax increment equivalent grant, or TEAG, is a financially impactful incentive used by many municipalities. The grant is based on the tax increment between property taxes collected before development and the increased taxes that will be collected after development. The grant starts with 100% of the tax increment in year 1 and declines 20% per year for an additional 4 years. So for example, in year 1, the grant would be 100% of the tax increment. By year 5, it would be down to 20% of the tax increment. And in year 6, they would be paying full taxes. There's a short-term revenue loss for the city, but with a long-term gain once the taxes are being paid in full at the end of the 5-year term. The second incentive is an exemption from site plan application fees and a grant for building permit fees, which would only apply to the city's application fees, not fees required by other commenting or review agencies. The site plan application fees would be a smaller incentive between approximately $10,000 to $20,000, depending on the size of the development. Building permit fees would need to be made whole through CIP funding and could be significant for a large development as they are on a per square meter calculation. So for example, a 215,000 square foot industrial building would have base building permit fees of approximately $250,000. The third proposed funding stream is grants for studies such as engineering and environmental studies. As proposed, it would be a 50-50 matching grant with the city, up to $25,000 per study and $250,000 per property. This incentive is important for a couple of reasons. The inventory of shovel-ready vacant employment land is currently low. This may give vacant landowners incentive to get their properties more shovel-ready by completing some of the required studies. And the more shovel-ready a site is, the more attractive it is to potential purchasers. Another benefit is that studies required during the development process can be difficult to initially determine and can become quite costly. Different developments can require different studies depending on the complexity of the site. So for landowners or companies to be able to access funding for studies that perhaps they did not initially budget for would be a benefit. The last incentive we are proposing is a development charge deferral program. This program would allow qualifying projects to seek approval to defer development charge payments without interest from building permit issuance to prior to receiving occupancy, or an 18-month time frame from building permit issuance, whichever comes first. Although not as significant an incentive as DC abatements, this allows developers to initially free up significant funds for their project, making it a valuable incentive. Recognizing the recent mayoral direction for a pilot development charge deferral program and the provincial legislation related to DC deferrals that has also recently been tabled, this proposed element of the CIB will be assessed in context of these two recent developments to determine its inclusion in the final recommended framework. So that summarizes the program details. Following this public meeting, we will consider the comments received through the public engagement process and revise the CIP accordingly. We'll finalize the application forms and the scorecard that will be used to prioritize funding allocations, as well as finalize budget options. We'll then prepare a report for General Committee for September. More information can be found on the project webpage at barrie.ca/employmentlands-CIP or by contacting myself or the Invest Barrie office. We'd be happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. I know we have some members of council who look forward to asking questions, but before that, we'll invite members of the public. No one's pre-registered, and I look at the gallery. Anybody want to come down? And seeing no one, that allows us to move right to comments. And given this is a citywide initiative, all members are able to ask questions. First, I'll go to members of committee. I know that, Marinello, you'd like to have comments. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to this. And I want to say thank you to our public servants again. Like, this is, I think, very forward thinking. I think this is a proper reaction to the date and time we have in terms of the difficulty it is and for folks to make ends meet, for the amount of people that are driving to Toronto. I think this is exactly on theme. I think this is exactly where we need to be going. And I've heard nothing but positive about what we offer to those who are looking to do business in Barrie. And I think this will really up our game. So I'm going to leave all of the praise on the table, and now I'm going to ask you a live question. And this is, I'm not asking for an answer tonight. So this is more of maybe a takeaway, a comment to be considered. As you said, the next step is to really consider the comments that are going to come in. And one of the items that we've heard with industrial land is when it's on a main road, it's under site plan controls. And when it's not on a main road, it doesn't have the same controls in place. And there's a whole bunch of things related to that, but I'm gonna kind of move this from the question of site plan controls to the economics of that, which is, if you're under site plan controls, you also have to post LCs for internal work. And I'm now quoting a point that came in. Okay, so this isn't me, but I do think it's worth looking at. If it's 50% of the internal work cost and 100% of the external work costs, what you're talking about is upwards of could be essentially what I'm being told is 2%, and that could be $20,000 to $40,000 an acre. So if there's $20,000 to $40,000 of cost per acre related to the LCs, is there a way that we can focus on those sites to say, can we not collect the LCs like we're collecting them, not collecting them on industrial lots that are not under the site plan controls? And if it takes 3 to 4 years to develop out a site, maybe it only takes 2 years in employment lands, and I don't know the stats and I don't have the data, so I just don't know. But you could be talking anywhere from $40,000 to $80,000 per acre, and if you're looking at a 10-acre development, then those add up, and they're not actually dollars that we jump on unless they have not abided by the site plan controls and agreements with the city. So there's no loss unless they don't put the trees where they said they were going to, or the sewer doesn't work the way that they said it was going to, at which point you wouldn't have anybody go into the building anyway, and they're sitting there with millions of dollars, and it's in their best interest to make it work. So I'm just wondering if that's a thing that we can consider looking at, which is the cost associated with the LCs.
Through you, Chair Harris, to Mayor Nuttall, it would be outside the scope of the CIP, and certainly I think that would be something through development services. There is already some things, exemption to site plan, but in terms of the LC specifically, we would need to explore that with development services, but could do that as part of a comprehensive look at opportunities.
Okay, so just to confirm, that it's not something that could qualify under this, but I should follow up with Ms. Banfield. Is that?
Through you, Chair Harris, to Mayor Nuttall, we haven't seen it in a CIP, so I think we'd have to validate if LC exemption would be something that could fall under the CIP program, so we can take that back and look at it, and if not, I think it's we can have an overall conversation as part of that exploration.
Through you, Chair Harris, to Mayor Nuttall. So ultimately, letters of credit and those calculations are done through bylaws that are enforced by council. So we would have to kind of take a look back at that. We do understand that letters of credit and those types of things are a challenge for businesses to put up. But on the flip side, unfortunately, we've had some examples where we have had to, as a city, use some of those letters of credit to make sites safe again when sometimes things don't go right. So there are risks associated with that approach for sure. But as Ms. Schlichter said, we can certainly include that in a report back.
And if you could include any industrial properties that's occurred with, that would be good as well, because I think that's actually a good answer, right? Is if, look, we've seen this issue's come and it's not there for no reason, and here's the result of said incident, here's what we've had to do, and if it wasn't there, we wouldn't be in a position to be able to action.
Great, thank you. Any further questions from members of the committee? Deputy Mayor Thompson.
Through you, Chair Harris, to the presenters, whoever would like to answer. This is great, and it's the first of, and I know there's been other things that we've attracted some business with. I just, how does this compare to surrounding municipalities? Like at some of the things that you're introducing, you had mentioned you hadn't seen it in other CIPs, so there are other municipalities doing some of this. So I just wanted to know, like, from Toronto to here, are we competing? Like, are we ahead of the curve? Are we offering more as the attraction to draw the business here?
Through you, Chair, to Deputy Mayor Thompson. There are a mixed use across the province. You see some municipalities using their DC program and abatements as their key driver. There are some others that do use the CIP program. There are a handful. Bradford West Gwillimbury has used one. And I don't have another one off the top of my head, of course. But I think within the suite of items, we are fairly competitive with the other pieces out there. But I do think this does provide an overall edge. Again, some do, some don't, so there is a mix, but without a doubt, this puts us on the playing field in a significant way.
Perfect. Thank you for all the work.
Thank you. Members of council in attendance, do you have any questions or clarification? And I see both. I'll start with Councillor Rietman and then Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Chair Harris. And a great report and a great incentive. I'm just looking at the funding part of it, and that is, it seems to me that the tax incentive and the DC deferral and the site plan fee deferral are all sort of money that we don't get. It's not like we're taking money out of our pocket and giving it to somebody. It's money that we're deferring or we're not getting at this point. But the only one is the study grants. And those are, something like $250,000 per, up to a maximum, per site. And I'm just wondering, where is that money coming from? Are we going to need to set up a fund to pay for that?
Through you, Chair Harris, to Councillor Rietma, as part of the report back, the budget piece there is not an allocated budget to a CIP. As you've indicated, many of the things we've looked to have be revenue deferrals, but there are some things in the program that would need to be funded. There is currently some reserve, small, in the employment land, but as part of that report back, we would provide some cost variables and a suite of budget options that council could consider in terms of how and to what proportion they want to support this package.
Thank you. Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Chair Harris. I think a really good place is the tens of millions of dollars we got from both the federal and provincial government for some of these housing initiatives. But the way I start with that is, and I will make sure to ask this from the question, Ms. Schlichter, you did a presentation about a year and a half ago. I'll summarize it, and if I misrepresent, please clarify. That what I took away from it, the summary was, Barrie used to have a value proposition. The value proposition was from desk to dock, lower cost of living, both home purchases or rents, and while the wages aren't as competitive, great lifestyle, great housing, comparables to some of those South 905. In that presentation, you weren't being negative, you're being factual. That housing affordability as an incentive has eroded. I don't want to say eliminated, but definitely has eroded because Barrie's rents, while they have come down significantly over the last 2 years, we're no longer near the top 3 all the time. Those are challenges, and while all home prices in a way went up, have come down, and there's a lot of uncertainty, we're still up there, yet our wages, with I'm sure some exceptions, still lag behind some GTA, hence why we still have residents who commute. So would it be fair to say that an initiative such as this, so here's my question, is a response to making that case stronger for companies, out-of-town companies or existing companies wishing to build a bigger one so they don't have to move to Severn, Marinettle, like that one place we went to make the case stronger, since, it's all about different buckets, and if our bucket in terms of housing affordability has gone down, maybe, and so to the logic of the business owner, the company going, we may not locate to Barrie because the value proposition is in there, but if the numbers pencil better for the actual construction of the building, is this just another strategy for us to highlight to the market what we already know, that Barrie is a great place to do business?
Through you, Chair Harris, to Councillor Morales, I think this is a response overall to a globally competitive climate for attracting employment and investment. And when you look at site selectors and what they're looking for, access to talent is critical. We have that in spades. Yes, lifestyle goes into the picture, affordability goes in, and yes, our affordability, when you compare us to markets such as the GTA, we are certainly competitive, but we also have to take that bigger step back and say, how do we look in the global marketplace? When I'm a company that can be maybe anywhere, why do I pick Barrie? And I think this set of tools is intended to address some of that. So we certainly see interest from the GTA, and we certainly see business owners saying, yeah, okay, I can get more for same or less here. My employees, many of them already come from this area and are heading to this heat map. But when we take it to that broader scale and the size and scale and the types of investments we're trying to make, it serves the purpose of being more globally competitive as well.
My recollection of one of the many points you made in the presentation a bit ago was that Barrie's housing competitive advantage of housing affordability, rental or purchase, isn't, or at the time you made the presentation, wasn't where it was, say, 5-6 years ago. And I don't just mean, well, everything changes, inflation exists, but even proportionally, would it be fair to say that that was an accurate a characterization of your comments? I just want to, it's not trying to go like gotcha. What it's trying to say is initiatives like this react to, if one bucket is getting smaller, then you add a bucket. You be bold. You do what maybe other municipalities aren't doing as much, as Deputy Mayor Thompson said. But I just want to, I can't get to that comment until I just clarify the foundation. Is that a correct recollection of some of the, I could watch it later, but of that presentation about a year or so ago?
Through you, Chair Harris, to Councillor Morales, I want to tell you that I remember every nuance of my presentation. I've given a few, so I don't have all of my precise words, but I think it's certainly reasonable to say that affordability in housing, and Barrie has certainly seen an increase in housing valuations and rental accessibility. So I think affordability across the board has been challenged over the years. So yes.
Okay, no, perfect. Thank you for
I
that.
may not have it right on mark.
No, again, it wasn't a gotcha. It was to create the bigger picture that I appreciate your work. This work is appreciated because we need to be innovative on this. Thank you, Chair Harris, for the time.
Great, thank you. Any other members of council? Seeing none, I do have one question, and thank you both. And again, the praise is clearly warranted. I wondered, and Deputy Mayor Thompson asked a question about our kind of alignment with other, where are we in this kind of space? And so maybe more to that is we're focusing on advanced manufacturing, health, and life sciences. When you did that scan, are we competing in that space with others? Is that kind of a common space people are looking at advancing?
To you, Chair Harris, without a doubt, we're competing. Ontario is still automotive heavy. We have the benefit of Honda in our broader region, but there are certainly other regions in Ontario that have automotive areas. So we are competing in that marketplace, particularly in that area, Ontario as a whole. So we've aligned a lot of this with where Invest Ontario is also strategically putting the advantages. And again, health and life sciences, an emerging sector. You think about our hospital, you think about South Medic and some of our key employers here, and there are some things that start to develop a bit of that ecosystem that can attract investment.
Great, thank you. Yes, and certainly the STEM campus, Lakehead, will be another driver to help them as you learn how important that is for advanced manufacturing. So thank you. Thank you for the presentation. If anyone has any further written comments, you can submit them to Economic and Creative Development at invest@barrie.ca. Thank you. That moves us to reports of advisory committee. There was one advisory committee report to be received and two recommendations. The report of the Heritage Barrie Committee dated April 22, 25. The report of the Heritage Committee dated April 22 is to be received. And the Heritage Barrie Committee report dated April 22nd, 25 contains two recommendations for the committee to consider. And if no member of council is wishing to hold these, we can approve them on consent. And seeing that they are not to be held, we can approve them on consent. Anything else required, Madam Clerk?